Thank you for joining us this morning to explore Napa. My name is Jessie. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Greenbelt Alliance. And for those of you who aren't familiar with our work, our mission is to educate, advocate, and collaborate to ensure the Bay Area's lands and communities are resilient to a changing climate. The work we do to protect the Bay Area's natural and agricultural lands, while also creating thriving communities, as well as this free outings program, is made possible by you. So please donate today, which you can do so securely on our website at greenbelt.org/donate. And during the outing, please feel free to ask questions. We will answer them at the end. And I know Bob has some interactive portions of his presentation. So again, we just ask that you use the chat function or the Q&A function for that, and we'll do our best to track and make sure we include everyone. And lastly, I'd like to note that this presentation will be recorded, and we will send a link to that recording and a follow-up email, which should land in your inbox later today. And if for some reason you don't see that email, you can always find recordings to all of our virtual events on our website if you go to greenbelt.org/past events. So with that, I will hand it over to Ken, our wonderful outings leader, who will kick things off. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. I just want to remind people that in 2 weeks, on June 19th, we'll offer a virtual version of our annual summer solstice outing, where we kind of feature the crepuscular fauna and flora of the Bay Area. Today's presenter is Bob Johnson, who's a longtime outings leader and even a longer time Greenbelt Alliance board member, 30 years as of this year. And that translates to 210 in dog years. So that's pretty impressive, Bob. Bob's the author of Berkeley Walks, which he'll tell you about in a moment, along with his co-author, Janet Byron, who's another one of our outings leaders. But today, rather than exploring the architecture and urban landscape of the East Bay, Bob's going to guide us through the natural landscapes and some of the natural landscapes of the North Bay. So Bob, take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ken. As Ken noted, I'm a longtime Greenbelt board member. I actually grew up in the Midwest and went to college in Washington University, St. Louis. After graduation, I lived in the Philippines for 3 years as a US Peace Corps volunteer. And after that, for 13 years in Japan, where I worked mainly in financial industry. I then settled in Berkeley in 1985 and immediately began walking around the town and hiking in the Bay Area. And I really became very appreciative of the fact that compared to living in Tokyo, where it took a long time to get out to large areas of public open space, I was living in a very walkable place, Berkeley, and all around the Bay Area, and some of them very close, were areas of public open space. I can, in less than 10 minutes walk, I can be at a trailhead for Tilden Park, for example, which connects up to other parks. So that's something we're very fortunate about in the Bay Area. And Greenbelt Alliance has played a big part in making sure that we have so much protected open space land, not only recreation lands, but of course, watersheds, forest lands, and local agriculture. And it's something Greenbelt Alliance has been working on for over 60 years. In any case, we're doing all this walking around Berkeley and leading walks for Greenbelt and other groups, sometimes with my friend Janet. We decided in 2015 to put those into a book, and we were able to find a publisher and get Berkeley Walks published in 2015. This expanded and updated edition came out in 2018 with 21 self-guided walks with everything from where did famous people live, architecture, street trees, gardens, rock outcrops, and so on, bits of history. But today we're going to go to Napa, where I did 3 hikes. We stayed overnight at Calistoga, did 3 hikes with my companion in mid-April to see the wildflowers. Although 2 of the hikes also had significantly burned areas. So we're going to explore all of that with in virtual fashion. The 3 walks are the Skyline Wilderness, the Oat Hill Mine Trail, and the Bothey Napa State Park. So here's a map of Napa County, a map of Napa County. This light to medium green is a category they call agriculture, watershed, and open space. And a lot of that is hills and mountains. The dark green here is what they call agricultural resource, and that's mainly Napa Valley and some smaller valleys, and that's mainly, of course, vineyards. The orange areas are it's urban residential. Those are the cities of Calistoga, St. Helena, and Napa City. The purple area is industrial. The blue area is public institutional. That includes, for example, Napa, a college there. And then this one is probably the state hospital. So we're going to start off just to the right of here. And I think it's this area. It'll be just behind this blue area. And this was founded at this site in 1875, was founded a major facility, which was originally called the Napa Insane Asylum. It was on a former Mexican land grant called Rancho Tulacay that the state had purchased in 1872. There was this imposing building, quite amazing, called the Castle, which was unfortunately torn down after World War II. And there was also, from the start probably, a large farm. It was a very large site that continued out up the hills. And the farm provided fruit, vegetables, meat and dairy products for the residents, who often worked on the farm as a form of therapy. Well, there is still a large facility there called now the Napa State Hospital, as in the sign there, which has over 1,000 patients, mainly committed for penal reasons, and more than 2,000 staff. The location is called Imola, after a city in Italy which had historic mental hospitals. When the state decided in 1979 that the upper part of the site with the reservoir was no longer needed, there were concerns on how it might be developed. And a nonprofit group was formed by citizens to try and make it into a park for the public. Now, it is still state land, but it is leased to the county of Napa, which in turn leases it to the Skyline Park Citizens Association, and they run the park. It includes an RV park, an archery range, native plant garden, a horse arena, a disc golf course, and a large area of trails, most of which were built by the Citizens Association. The trails also connect up to the Bay Area Ridge Trail, and from that connects to other areas of open space. The trails in Skyline Wilderness are open to hikers, mountain bikers, and equestrians. I've been many times over the years, although it's been a number of years since this most recent visit. And I led a Greenbelt, an in-person Greenbelt wildflower outing there back in 2008. So here is a map of the Skyline Wilderness Park. The state hospital is over to the left, and this is a road coming in from Highway 29. And this is the entrance here where there's a parking area and a picnic area. I think it's something like $7 or $8 entry fee for car for day use. From there, we start off on the trail, which there's actually, the trail is fenced off here from these two smaller reservoirs that at the moment are kind of low and covered in red algae. And there is a camp, there's a camping area here that is not part of the Napa Wilderness. It's just for special uses. Anyway, the trail then opens up into this area of the Skyline Wilderness Park. And we took the upper Skyline Trail, which comes up on the ridge here. And then I think the Buckeye Trail to get down to Lake Marie. And we came back on the Lake Marie Road. Now the trails, as I mentioned, go on up into the, further up into the hills here and join up with the Bay Area Ridge Trail. but we didn't go quite that far on this outing. It was about 7 miles round trip, but going on the upper Skyline Trail meant some more steep climbing, but it also meant there were lots of wildflowers and some good views from up there. So after having passed between those two little reservoirs and in getting the area where things open out in the hillside, here's a typical hillside in the park that has both some orange poppies and some other flowers. Let's take a close-up of one patch of hillside. And in this one, we have the white flowers are called popcorn flowers, and the blue ones are lupins. And lupin, the scientific name is Lupinus. It comes from the word lupus in Latin, which means wolf. Now, why did they call these plants the wolves? Well, because the lupins often grew in areas of very poor soil. And it was thought initially that the lupins were basically stealing the nutrients from the soil. Actually, after more study, it was learned that quite the reverse, that the lupins, which are a member of the pea family, actually fix nitrogen in the soil. So they're actually good for the soil. It's just that they're capable of growing in nutrient poor soils. And in California, there are dozens of versions of lupins. They do grow in other places too. I think in Texas, they're called bluebonnets. But California may be one of the places where we have the most diversity of species. So I'm not going to say, I'm not sure which particular one this is. Anyway, let's go on a little bit from here. And we've climbed up on the upper Skyline Trail. So now the views start to open up. Here's Napa City down there, and a bit off into the haze is going up into the Napa Valley where the vineyards are. So this particular plant is a relative of the Indian paintbrush, and it's called owl's clover. It's a smaller plant than the typical Indian paintbrush, but similar. It's a Castelleja excerta, and similar to paintbrush, it is a parasitic plant, partially parasitic plant that the partially parasitic may produce a little bit of its own chlorophyll, but it's parasite on getting some of its nutrients from roots of other plants such as grasses. By the way, these funny things here that look kind of round with a long whatever, those are the seeds of another plant that's a European. It's found everywhere in the grasslands. It has little kind of purplish flowers that they call clocks because of these seeds that look like the hands of a clock. It's an erodium. But you'll find in the grasslands everywhere. They've just spread everywhere, even though it's a European plant. So here's my companion Tatsia, and we're up on the upper Skyline Trail. And then so down here is the narrow valley that leads up to the Lake Marie Reservoir, and that's the hillside on the other side. In this particular park, there are woodlands, there is chaparral, and there are grasslands. So with those three different kinds of habitat, there's quite a diversity of plants. You will notice though, even though this is mid-April when we went, look at the grass is already turning brown. So of course it was another severe drought year this year. So here's when I'd like to make this a little bit interactive. I would like you to try and identify this blue and white flower. So what you can do is if you think you know, and don't worry, there's no penalty for wrong answers. If you could write the name in the chat, and then we'll see if you made a good guess or not. Is anyone typing a name in?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. All right. Great. Great. Yes. Thank you. Baby blue eyes. Blue eyes is also correct, and baby blue eyes is correct. Common names are such that there is often more than one common name for a particular plant. I'm sorry, I actually caused us to jump ahead here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Sorry, in moving, sorry. I'm sorry. What happened is I was I was clicking on the chat, and for some reason that advanced the slides to more than I wanted it to do. Okay, come on. Huh, doesn't want to go back. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So baby blue eyes, obviously because of the color of the petals. And the scientific name of that is Nemophilia menzies. Nemophilia means lover of woodland. So this is a plant that grows mostly in shady areas, or at least partly shady areas. And menzies is named after the person who first identified the plant, who is Archibald Mingus, a Scotsman. Now, I understand from a Scottish friend and something I saw on the internet that although we've anglicized it to Menzies because it's spelled that way, M-E-N-Z-I-E-S, in Scotland it's actually pronounced Mingus, as though there's a kind of a swallowed G sound. So Archibald Mingus, as I said, was this Scotsman who was I think he was a surgeon. Yes, he was a surgeon and a naturalist, and he traveled extensively with the Royal Navy. He was supposedly the first European to reach the summit of Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii. Of course, the Hawaiian natives had been there long before. In addition to Hawaii, he also traveled to the west coast of North America and collected plant specimens, and several he identified, which of the ones he identified have his name, including this one, which is the Nemophilia menzies, and another one is Arbutus menzies, which are the madrone trees that are also found in the Bay Area. On the other hand, the Pseudotsuga menzies, which is the Douglas fir, was named by someone else in his honor. There's also a smaller flowered version of the baby blues that's actually it's a smaller flower and it's white, but it's another Nemophilia, and it's actually more common than the blue one. Well, as our want, when we were on a nice long hike, we stopped for a leisurely picnic. And to find a good spot, we had to go kind of uphill off the trail, up on the ridge. And we found this spot that was in the shade. And it's looking out. This is actually outside the park, and you can see on the hillside here, there's a little bit of a vineyard. So the park is a little bit kind of narrow in the way it goes diagonally sort of up into the hills. By the way, I think there's been some controversy in Napa with some of since the valley floor is all full of agriculture, the new vineyards have been created up in the hills. In some cases, the oak trees were removed to create the vineyards, which has caused some controversy. Here we are finally at Lake Marie. It's also because of, I think, the low rainfall. It has some red algae, but it's not completely covering the lake. It's a rather pretty spot. As I mentioned, the trails go up beyond Lake Marie into the hills, and we have in the past gone up around and then gone up this steep hill and come back, looped around another way. On this particular day, we felt, well, we wanted to kind of get back because we needed to get up to Calistoga to stay where we were going to stay for the night. By the way, somebody has put in the chat, after Baby Blues, anyone wanting to know more about Napa State Hospital should read Confessions of Madam Psyche by Dorothy Bryant. So yeah, I'm sure there's a fascinating history of that place since it's been around for, what would it be, 150 years now almost. Okay, so on our way back, we've taken the Lake Marie Road, which I'm sure that probably dates back to when the lake was, there was a dam to create that lake. It's not a natural lake. And it must have been an old wagon road. It's fairly wide and not too steep. And the first part of it is in the forest, although the latter part will be in the sun. So here's another flower for you to try and identify in the chat. This one grows mainly in the shade, has those little tiny white flowers. I wonder if anyone wants to make a guess for this one. Could just type it in the chat. If you just click on the chat, which is what? You usually found it at the bottom of your screen, I think. All right, we already have a good answer from Joyce, which is the false Solomon seal. And there are two false Solomon seals. This is one of them. This one is called the Starry false Solomon seal, and the other one I think is called the fat false Solomon seal, if I'm not disremembering that. As noted, this one grows mainly in shady areas. I assume it got that name because probably the little kind of star-shaped flowers must be similar to the official seal that King Solomon used. So here's another wildflower that's somewhat common. I'm sorry that it's a little blurry, but I just had my iPhone rather than my really proper digital camera. And while it can take very good photos, sometimes it's not quite as versatile or flexible about close-ups and so on. So anyway, this is a purple larkspur, and it's one of the delphiniums. And even though it was a little blurry, I wanted to put it in because it's such a wonderful color on this flower. So here's another flower that grows in either somewhat shady or not too intensely sunny areas. And the yellow flowers are violas. So it's actually the same family as our garden pansies, which are also have the scientific name viola. This one in particular, I think is called the California golden violet. So violets are also in the same family. And the little purple flowers in this are some kind of sweet pea, but I'm not sure. There are both native and non-native, and I'm not sure if this is, it may be one of the natives, but I'm not sure. Sweet peas are Lathyrus. All right, so in this picture, can you find and identify what's the animal in the picture rather than the flower? We're looking for the animal. Okay, that was quick. Okay, Madhu got the answer. It's the California quail. I'm fairly sure it's the male of the quail species. When they can fly, although when they take off, they really make a very loud sound, and generally they seem to prefer to run around the ground if they can. In Japan, where I lived for many years, quail eggs are quite popular, and we sometimes buy them for a certain dish at Tokyo Fish Market in Berkeley. I would assume they're farmed quail eggs, not that they haven't gone out and picked them in the wild. Okay, here's one more flower to identify. So this one, we're out the part of Lake Murray Road, which is in the sun now. So this is a flower that grows quite well in the sunny places. If you want to try and type it, if you know what it is, try and type in the answer. Maybe I've stumped everybody. Okay, well, we have one which says looks like a daisy, and it does look rather like a daisy, and I'm not sure if it really is a daisy, but I think it's probably similar to a daisy in being what they call a compound flower. So we have some other answers of California buttercup and so on, but Patricia has put in the correct answer, which is they are goldfields. Because of the color, obviously, and because there is one of those things that can grow profusely in a given spot, so it looks like a field of gold. And Lasthenia is actually the scientific name, if I remember correctly. And goldfields are one of those flowers that, kind of like poppies and some others, tend not to open up until it's sunny or at least somewhat bright, which may be partly to protect the flowers in case of rain and fog drip and so on, washing out the pollen. Okay, so we finished that walk, and we've had a good night's sleep, hopefully, in Calistoga, and we're ready for another hike, hike 2, which is of the Oat Hill Mine Trail. And the location of the trailhead is such that it's at the edge of Calistoga. We were able to walk there in a little less than 20 minutes from where we were staying. And Highway 29 comes up kind of the west side of the Napa Valley, and then it turns east and it becomes the main street of Calistoga, and then it comes over here to this point here where the arrow is, where it meets the Silverado Trail that's come up the other side of Napa Valley, and that's just where the trailhead is for the Oat Hill Mine Trail that wends its way up here. It gains about 2,000 feet in 5 miles to this place called Holmes Place, and it actually goes several miles beyond that, but we just went to this point where it intersects a trail called the Palisades Trail that goes up to Robert Louis Stevenson State Park and Mount St. Helena. Now, the name Oat Hill Mine Trail comes because originally there was, at the furthest point of this trail, which I can't remember, I think it's 8.6 miles, something like that, was a mine called the Oat Hill Mine, oat as in wheat, oats, barley, etc. And the mine was for cinnabar, which was refined into mercury, and the mercury was in turn used to extract gold and silver from the ore, and that mine was a very successful one. It started in 1872, and in 1893 they built this road to connect to Calistoga, because in Calistoga there was a railhead and they could take out the cinnabar, the mercury by rail. And it continued to be very successful for many years. At one point, it was accounting for something like 1/3 of the mercury mined in the United States. Eventually, though, other methods for extracting gold and silver were used, and the mine finally closed down in the late 1960s, and the trail that had been used for wagons was in turn popular as a route for Jeeps and motorcycles and other off-road vehicles. But there ended up being so many accidents on it that it was closed off. But then activists were able to open it up as a trail for hiking, equestrians, and mountain bikes. Well, it's not super steep in any one place. It goes up pretty steadily, this 2,000 feet in 5 miles, and some of the trail is eroded and a bit rough. Most of it is fairly wide, but some of it's fairly eroded. There are also places where you can still see the ruts made by the wheels of the wagons, because they put metal on around the wood of the wheels to make them last longer, and that wore into the softer rock. So anyway, so we're going to go up this trail, and we're not going to go all the way to the Oat Hill mine, and the actual old mine site is supposedly closed to the public. There is a photo here that somebody was able to get to it by road from the other end somewhere, and there are some ruins from the mine, but we're not going to visit those today, and I don't think we can visit them. So this bright blue flower is one that I'm not sure what it is. So I'm curious if Ken or someone else knows what this particular flower is.
No, it's got me stumped.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see in the chat here, we have Danny Clark, who used to work at Greenbelt Alliance. Welcome. Okay, well, it's a pretty flower. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll just go on from there then. Okay, well, this is one I do know what it is, and maybe some of you may know and can put in chat what this yellow flower that sort of hangs down is. One clue is that, what does it kind of look like to you? We'll give you a hint on what the common name of it is. Oh, great. Yes. So Gretchen has put in one of the correct common names, which is Diogenes lantern. It is also called the globe tulip. And what was the other one? There's another common name. Oh, it's also called fairy lanterns. Fairy lanterns, Diogenes lantern, or globe tulips. And it's a calochortus. And the calochortus also includes flowers which look quite different from this at first glance. The Mariposa tulip, also called Mariposa lilies, which are open sort of cup-like flowers that come in yellows and creams and so on, with what looks like somebody did beautiful little sketching inside them. But both flowers share having 3 petals and similar parts to the flower. So anyway, that's the fairy lantern, and it's a lovely early spring flower. And there were lots of them on this trail. Okay, so as I mentioned, there were some fires in 2 of the trails that we're doing today, and the Oat Hill Mine Trail is one of those. In 2017, there was the Tubbs fire shown on this map that burned in Napa and Sonoma, and unfortunately burned many homes in northern part of Santa Rosa. And then last year in September was the Glass fire, which burned 56,781 acres. And was in one day in September 28th, it burned 31,000 acres. So this fire actually jumped over Napa Valley. This is Napa Valley here. And it threatened the towns of Calistoga and St. Helena, which were under mandatory evacuations. Fortunately, they were able to stop the fires before they burned into the cities, but there still were some homes and wineries and other structures lost in the fire. Fortunately, most of the main wineries in the valley, which is irrigated land, were not burned during the fire. Now, why are we having such big fires lately? Well, it's partly there've always been fires in California. I mean, it's part of the way things have developed here. That because we have these dry summers, that we have these fires as well, and they could be started by lightning. The Native Americans also used to set fires, and those fires were sometimes like to clear out brush and so on, so they could easily harvest acorns. They had also the beneficial effect of, by setting fires at certain times, you generally prevented the mega fires. So what has happened, one thing is that by stopping all fires over the last 100+ years, trying to stop all fires, we've allowed the fuels to build up so that we had with mega fires. And another factor seems to be that with global climate change, things are getting drier and we're having more frequent and more intense fires. And that's something that, because it's threatening our built environment as well, Greenbelt, which works to protect our open space and make our cities better places, has taken on the theme that what we really have to do is to make the Bay Area more resilient in case of fire, more resilient in case of floods from heavy storms, more resilient in case of sea level rise. And that means better planning on where we develop. So this is something we're really going to have to focus on more in the coming years as climate change becomes more of an issue. Well, down at the beginning of the trail, there were areas that mostly green. You weren't so aware of the fire. Once in a while, there was a burned tree. We did get up into the mid part of the walk, and there were some areas that were completely burned. You can see it's right at this spot, all of the trees and shrubs were completely blackened by the glass fire. Now here's another photo which shows that there are blackened trees. There are also trees that survive, and then there's lots of green grass and some wildflowers. So California has, most plants have adapted to the fact that there are fires. So some things like manzanita can resprout fairly easily from the roots. The grasses and flowers generally tend to come back fairly quickly, because this is actually April, after there'd been a big fire in September that swept over this area. Some trees, like I know there are some trees like lodgepole pine, which we don't have so much right in our area, but actually the cones won't even open up until there's the heat of a fire. If the fire is too intense, though, it could even basically scorch the topsoil, and even the seeds would not recover. So here's another sample of, you can see there's some burned shrubs here, and maybe this tree got burned, but the grass and wildflowers have come out amidst the rocks. So here's a flower called the red or scarlet larkspur. We saw the purple larkspur earlier, and so this is in the same family. It tends to be a little bit narrower with a longer, this part is called the spur going back than the purple larkspur. They're both really lovely flowers though. So we're getting a little higher up on the trail, and here's another view of, there's a substantial burned area there, and then part of Calistoga down in the valley can be seen here in the distance. So as mentioned, the fire did jump over the valley and burn some areas on the other side without generally burning the valley itself. So earlier we saw the owl's clover, and here's its relative, which is probably more familiar to you, is the Indian paintbrush, which is a fairly common wildflower that tends to grow in fairly dry areas, but it's also another parasite, although it does have some leaves. And the Indian paintbrush can come in red, yellow, and in orange. I don't know if there's a purple version. I know there's red, yellow, and orange. In any case, we're getting fairly high up now. And you can see where the trail has come up. You can see where these trees were kind of isolated, maybe just the grass around them burned, so they didn't burn in the fire. Whereas the ones that were a lot of trees close to each other, the fire spread through them. You can also see these rock outcrops. And mainly the rocks in this area are volcanic rocks. This area, mainly of California, was at one time under the sea. And then the movement in tectonic plates caused it to be pushed up. Those tectonic plates grinding each other also created a lot of heat and a lot of volcanic activity. So from about 150 million years ago, as this area was pushed up, there's also been a lot of volcanic activity that came, different types of volcanic activity that came on and off all through this period. And also other kinds of rock that were, for example, on the ocean bed, got pushed up as well. And one of the results of that is that Napa Valley, from the soils that come from these various rocks and other minerals, has very wide range of minerals in the soil. And it's one of the reasons that it is such a famous wine growing area. And of course, also this activity has left these, oops, sorry, went too far, has left these rock outcrops that we see now. Here's some quite big ones right close to the Oat Hill Mine Trail. And you can see they're fairly dark, so it does make you sort of think of that they are volcanic rocks. So we're pretty near the top of the trail. It starts to level off when you get to Holmes Place. It doesn't climb so steeply from there as it continued on towards the mine. And there's a view where you can see some burned areas, and then you can see this seems to be mostly agricultural area that's north of the town of Calistoga, which I think is over here beyond. And then on the other side of the valley are the Mayacamas Mountains, and beyond that you can just see a little bit, another one, a line of mountains off in in the distance that are part of the coastal range going, so the Pacific Ocean is over that way. This is a flower that was really growing in profusion up at this area that's called Holmes Place, and also it's where the Palisades start, which we'll get to in a moment. But Holmes Place, because there was a German settler who, I think his name was Gustav Holz, that's part of his name, I'm forgetting one part of his name anyway, who had established a place there and had orchards and so on. Apparently now there's only some of the foundations left from that, but that was in the probably 1880s, 90s, something like that anyway. So there's an area, this area is called Holmes Place, Holm. And these flowers though are called really gorgeous. They're called Seep monkey flowers. Seep because they apparently come where there are little seeps of water. But with the volcanic things like this, you often get seeps and springs. And it's a mimulus, so they're relatives of the sticky monkey flower that's pretty common around here with the orange flowers, kind of a shrubby plant, and of the golden monkey flowers that you'll see along sunny streams. They're all mimulus, but they were really very grand in mid-April here. Well, those volcanic rocks have formed cliffs here, and some of them actually make kind of columnar shapes. And they're called the Palisades, and they continue on up north here. The trade called the Palisades Trail follows along below them, but we didn't go that way. This is as far as we came that day. You can see many of the trees burned here, but not all of them. And well, another day, another picnic. So we stopped here and had a leisurely picnic of various finger foods and whatever, and maybe even a bit of a nap afterwards before we set on to go back down the hill, which is easier, but it's still a little rough in spots. I couldn't resist taking a picture of a lichen, which is another type of, I guess lichen is a plant, or is it, wait a minute. Well, Ken can correct me whether it's a plant or not. Anyway, there are many kinds of lichen, and in doing research for our book on Berkeley rocks, I came across Sylvia Durins Charnoff, who grew up in Berkeley on Marin Avenue, not far from where I live, and she graduated from Berkeley High. She had a particular passion for lichens, and she traveled all over North America with her husband and another man who were taking pictures of lichens. And this resulted in a highly regarded book published in 2001 called Lichens of North America, which I know they have a copy at the Berkeley Public Library. It covers more than 2,000 species. So there are a lot of kinds of lichen, with several seen on this rock here near the Palisades. And you can see there's the red or scarlet larkspurs here, and this may be a blue dick, and I'm not sure if these yellow flowers, if they're biscuit root or something else. Anyway, there's a lot of flowers that just grow right amidst the rocks here. As we start back down, noting here is a whole hillside full of California poppies, and also this flower is called blue dicks. It's another common spring flower. You may note that the California poppies here look rather yellow, and I think they do tend, I know in Point Reyes as well, they tend to be more yellow than the oranger tint that we generally see in our East Bay parks. Oh, I found my note on the guy from Holmes Place. It was Carl Gustav Holm. It was 1893 that he set up his homestead there. So going back down, I couldn't resist this to see the way the lava rock is eroded into such sort of fantastical forms here. And this is an example of a tree that had burned down at the bottom of the trunk, but it didn't seem to kill the tree. This is a live oak tree. And of course, the redwood trees have a bark that's fairly fire resistant, which is one of the reasons that they can live so long. in our fire-prone climate. Now, this is a plant called vetch, and it's a member of the pea family, like the sweet peas. And it looks kind of pretty, little purple flowers, but unfortunately, it's a real problem because it just kind of spreads very fast. The seeds, I guess, are spread around quickly on the fur of animals and so on, and it can just take over an area, and it basically kind of smothers or keeps out the other plants. So it's very difficult for the native plants to grow in areas where the vetch have taken over, and it's kind of sad. I can see places that have a lot of vetch now that didn't 10 or 15 years ago when I'm hiking around the Bay Area. Well, we finished the Oat Hill Mine walk. We're having a nice rest, and now we're going on both at Napa State Park for our final walk. This is a state park from 1960. Originally, of course, the Wapo Native American people lived here, and along the creeks, as there's one in this park. And then the Spanish and the Mexicans settlers were here, and then, of course, the American immigrants. There was also a Dr. Edward Bale, an Englishman, who married a niece of General Vallejo, who was a leader in the early Mexican period. And he became a Mexican citizen, and in the early 1840s acquired an 18,000 land grant in this area. Now, he built a sawmill in Napa Valley, and then over here, he built a grist mill, because originally Napa was mainly doing grain rather than vineyards. That there's the remains of that are a state historic park, and that's part of this both the Napa State Park, which follows up the Ritchie Creek and then up into the hills. And we're going to do a walk there where we started here. This is Highway 29 here that runs, and it's kind of halfway in between Calistoga and St. Helena. So we went on this upper side of the creek on the Ritchie Canyon Trail, got some pretty steep and narrow, rough parts up here. And we went all the way to this upper part of the park where there was a former homestead of the Traverso family. And then we came back taking the Spring Trail and the Redwood Trail on the other side. Now, there was also fire here, but in the first part of the walk, right along the stream, it was still generally pretty lush and green along Ritchie Creek. Here's another view of the trail going along nearby Ritchie Creek, and there's a very rich forest here. There's quite a variety of trees. There are redwoods, Douglas fir, live oak, tambark oak, black oak, big leaf maple, madrone, buckeye, bay laurel, alder, hazelnut, and maybe some others. Apparently, this is one of the places where redwood trees grow the farthest inland. I assume because it still has the fog and has the proper soil conditions and so on, because Napa is right where the cool, foggy coastal climate meets the hot, more arid Central Valley climate. And so that's another factor in Napa being such a good place for wines, I think. And probably all the redwoods in this area were logged at one time, but the second growth have come up fairly fast. Well, maybe not as impressive as the garden variety, but these are a native wild rose. I'm sorry again that the photo with the iPhone was just a little bit blurred, but they do have pleasant little pink flowers. Okay, one more for you to guess. Do you know this flower that has three petals and 3 sepals, which are the parts that would cover the bud before it opens up, and 3 big leaves? Oh, okay. We've got several here. Both Glenn and Madhu are correct in typing in trillium, and of course tri, because it's got 3. It's got 3 petals, 3 sepals, and 3 big leaves. And this is, I think it's called Trillium giganteum. There's also a purple variety as well as the white. Now, one other thing interesting in this is that there's another 3-leaf plant, which is poison oak, which of course causes a severe skin irritation. It's a relative of the poison ivy found in the Midwest and the East, where I grew up. And you should follow the old adage of leaves of 3 let them be. And the scientific name is Toxicodendron diversilobum. Diverse because it could be a ground cover, a small tree, a vine, and it never seems to be bothered by the droughts. It grows everywhere. Okay, well, I wanted to show this. I hope, yes, we've got a little video I took here. So the bottom of the trunk was pretty well blackened, but there's one trunk coming out of this old group that is still green at the top. So as we said earlier, the sorry, that's enough of that one. I want to stop. Okay. The redwoods are somewhat more resistant to fire than other trees. This is a pretty little flower. I really like it. It grows in the forest, and it's called hound's tongue because of the shape of the leaves. And the flowers are somewhat similar to forget-me-nots, but I think they're much prettier than forget-me-nots. So this is the site of that Traverso homestead, which was the farthest point we went. Apparently at one time there were some remaining apple trees, but I think the fire got them. The grass did come back though, but this was a heavily burned area. And we had our picnic up here. This is another photo. These are Douglas firs. You know, a number of these seem to have been killed off by the fire. There were others that were still green above, even though the trunks were blackened. And here again, you can see what somebody said, well, there's kind of a mosaic. Some areas burned intensely, some not at all, some sort of partly. So here you can see there's burned trees, but there's also trees that were saved from the fire. There's green stuff that's going back, and I think these may be Fremont star lilies, I'm not sure, that are growing up. And this is a tree that was blooming profusely, which I believe is the madrone, the one that's Arbutus menziesi, named after Dr. Mingus. They were just covered in flowers, so these trees seem to have survived the fire. And right along the stream, this is an area near that meadow that burned intensely, and yet right near the stream, it's green. And it's true that the streams can often, there's enough moisture to sometimes protect the plants from the fire. Well, finally, after seeing all these fires and all, which are interesting, but it was awfully nice to get back to an area that was so lush and green, and had not burned in the fire. So thank you very much. We got a few minutes left for questions. If you want to put them in the chat, perhaps, if you have any questions or comments you want to throw out. Feel free to do so. Meanwhile, I put in another plug for Greenbelt Alliance. I think we've done great work over the years, working with the local citizens group, working with elected officials, working with state, county, and city employees and employees agencies. The group has just done so much in helping to protect open space, helping promote new open space districts, help put urban growth boundaries around cities. I think we've just achieved so much, but there's still a lot of work to do. So I hope you can support us from here on.
Yeah, thank you for that plug, Bob. And on that note, I did want to bring up, because you discussed wildfire, and I think we're all very much aware and anxiously anticipating more wildfires to come this year, that our team at Greenbelt Alliance has worked on some original research around the roles that Greenbelt lands, which are the open spaces in the Bay Area, and how they can help mitigate the damage of wildfire, and the role that they play during wildfires. And so if you're interested in learning more about that and finding out more about this original research, I encourage you to attend our virtual launch, which is taking place on June 22nd. at 4 p.m. Again, it's virtual, so it will be on Zoom like we're doing today. And you can get more information about that event on our website at greenbelt.org/events and sign up for that. So just want to encourage folks to attend if you're interested.
We have a few more questions here, Will. Somebody asked me, what is my AM workout that keeps me in such good form? Well, I don't know if I'm in great form, but thanks. I don't know. It's a whole combination of all different stretching and breathing and somewhat calisthenic exercises and yoga poses that I've gotten from yoga teachers and physical therapists and so on over the years. So I don't know, I do one set of like 40 minutes before breakfast, another one of maybe 20 minutes after, and then I do lots of walking. Will Greenbelt Alliance be working to promote the return of cultural burning? Well, I think cultural burning means the way the Native Americans did it. I know something very similar, which we call controlled burnings, I believe is in part of the plan for how do we deal with preventing the big mega fires is doing controlled burning. East Bay Parks was going to do one in Tilden a week or so ago, but I think the weather wasn't quite right for it. So, and somebody's pointing out we have 60 million dead trees in the state, which releases more carbon. Cutting down or allowing them to remain in place. I don't know the answer to that, whether the trees that have already burned, whether you cut them down or leave them. I think once they burn, they've already released the carbon. So, and generally the trees are at some point going to fall over and enrich the soil, even if they burn, but not sure beyond that. And thank you for coming today and enjoying.
Yeah, and Bob, we have one more question that came in through the Q&A.
Okay.
Patricia asked, are controlled burns conducted in these areas to prevent more fires? Do you know?
Well, yeah, as I said,
Yeah.
They were planning to do one in Tilden of, I think it was 2.5 acres a week or two ago, and then they didn't decide the weather wasn't quite right for it. So it's definitely, I think, something that the state is looking at more seriously. And I know parks have done it. For example, Briones Park has done it to try and reduce the nasty alien plant called yellow star thistle. So controlled burns are done for sometimes to get rid of unwanted plants, but they're also often done to clear out the buildup of fuels close to the ground and therefore protect the forest from big mega fires. So it is a policy that's being done, and I think is going to be expanded in California. But you have to get the right time. You can't do it in the middle of the dry season very well.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our questions. Apologies if you can hear background noise on my end, but I did want to just thank everyone again for joining us this morning. Thank you, Bob, for another very interesting outing. We always learn so much from you. And just to remind folks that, again, this was recorded, so we will send a follow-up email with a link to that recording. Check your inbox for that later today. We have another outing coming up, as Ken mentioned, on June 19th. So check out our website to learn more about that. And yeah, please stay engaged with us. Follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.